We know all about how American dive bombers destroyed the Kido Butai at the Battle of Midway, but far less is said about Japanese dive bombers, except for their action at Pearl Harbor. To tackle this problem, we will dive deep into Japanese aircraft, weapons and tactics in this video to understand how the other side handled air power at sea and how successful they were. We will take on the dive bombers in this video, while a future video, already out for Patreons and channel members, well, that one will look at the torpedo bombers. A big thank you go to our friends at Dry Dock Games and JP Ferre for providing footage of their upcoming video game Task Force Admiral to this video. More information on the game at the end of the video and in the description. Let's familiarize ourselves with Japanese dive bombers. Throughout the war, multiple different designs were used, but the most famous one, also used as Pearl Harbor, was the D3A Val. The Aichi D3A Type 99 carrier bomber, called Val by the Allies, was a single-engine two-seat dive bomber. The tandem seating arranged the pilot up front, followed by the observer and gunner behind. It was powered by the Mitsubishi Kinsei 43 or 44, a 14-cylinder air-cooled radial engine with a maximum output of about 1000 horsepower. Maximum speed was about 390 km per hour, cruise speed was 300 km per hour. Later Vals would have the more powerful Kinsei 54 engine, which did give a slight performance boost. Our strike range was about 530 nautical miles, and the armament was two fixed forward 7.7mm Type 97 machine guns, and rearward protection was simple, a single defensive 7.7mm Type 92 machine gun. The primary armament was a single centerline 250 kg bomb. Additionally, one smaller 60 kg bomb could be placed under each wing. Now, the main anti-shipping bomb used by the Val was the Type 99 No. 25 250 kg bomb. It was an ordinary cylindrical bomb that either had a nose or a tail fuse for delayed action. The bomb itself featured a hardened front in order to penetrate up to 50 mm of deck armor. This is why it is often referred to as a semi-armor piercing bomb. A 60 kg warhead provides the explosive yield. Dive bombers also started to use HE bombs, or high explosive bombs, either in the first wave or as a mixed loadout, hoping to knock out personnel and AA defenses so that the remaining waves had an easier time. Since torpedo attacks were also to follow in close succession to the dive bombing, this would help them too. And while I just mentioned torpedo bombers, do check out my video on Japanese torpedo bomber tactics and our 4-part series on Japanese air power with Justin Pike. Some of these videos are out already, with Patreons and channel members having early access to the remaining ones, along with another bunch of perks. So we are on our way to look at the tactics of dive bombing, but let's familiarize ourselves with the basics of Japanese formation before that. A free-plane formation was known as a shotai, with bombers usually flying in a more rigid Vic-type formation, unlike the adapted shotai from the fighters. Add 3 shotai into one and you get a chutai. Add 2 or more chutai into one and, well, we get a daitai. For torpedo bombers, a force of 2 chutai was the overall standard, while dive bombers often had a third chutai in the daitai. And with that, let's go over the attack tactics. Attacks could vary between missions, but we do know of standardized practices. Let's go through this one by one. A formation could fly to the target area either in column, line astern, or in a large Vic-type formation. It was to adopt the latter once approaching the enemy fleet to have the most flexibility. The approach altitude was about 4,500 to 6,000 meters, using clouds where possible to retain the element of surprise. If possible, the sun should also be used to mask the approach. If that's not possible, the attack must be carried out against a blue sky, since the harsh contrast between the planes and a cloud cover would make it very easy to identify and track them. The lead plane is to designate the target, pass on information about wind, target speed, attack direction, and release altitude. The best approach was considered one from straight behind, so that the pilots could take proper lead and don't have to worry about misleading the targets both laterally and longitudinally. Once at about 1.5 to 2 kilometers from the dive point, each chutai adopts a column formation, with each shotai in that Chutai doing the same. This provides proper spacing and sequence of the attack. To minimize the effect of evasive actions, the attack should come from two directions. Now, as they're getting ready to dive, the planes deaccelerate to about 140 to 180 km per hour, and they start to extend dive brakes. Typically, dive angles were about 60 degrees, with a release altitude of 500 meters and a gentle 4 to 5 G pullout. To compare the German Ju-87 Stuka, the ideal diver angle there was considered to be 70 degrees, with a release altitude of about 700 meters because the bombs were bigger. And yes, this is a little plug for my Stuka book right here. Now, an attack by 18 Val dive bombers was to be completed within 1.5 minutes. A version of this attack is also glide bombing. The only difference here is that the attack is usually carried out from a lower altitude with angles of about 40 to 50 degrees and with a release altitude of about 300 to 400 meters. Also, it was possible that if the planes would use a conventional dive bombing approach, that they do not in fact dive all the way from 6,000 meters, but they first lose some altitude and then go into their final dive. Now the question is now, how successful were Japanese dive bombing attacks? This is very difficult to answer because the data I have is more limited than I'd like. Now there's the following entry in Francillon, open quote, "Despite its apparent obsolescence, the D3A being the last type of Japanese carrier-borne aircraft to have a fixed batted undercarriage, the aircraft achieved considerable success during the first 10 months of the war and sank more Allied fighting ships than any other single type of Axis aircraft." End quote. Sadly, Francillon did not directly cite the source, so I can't verify this for now, and I did not find a comprehensive and detailed statistic on the D3A or the 250 kilogram bomb that would exactly show this, either in that first 10 months time period or for the whole war. The historians that I asked didn't know either, and in the words of one respondent, open quote, "Everybody is very happy to say that Japanese aircraft sank a lot of Allied ships, but it seems nobody made statistics." End quote. Perhaps I am missing something in books or period documents. It is possible. If you know of a comprehensive list, I expect that one does exist. Please share it in the comments or reach out directly. Thanks go here to Justin Pike, Jean-Baptiste, and you know who you are for their help in this. My data for now comes from a document called Striking Power of Airborne Weapons, and it evaluates the sinking rate of struck ships. This is not a complete list, but it gives us an idea. I will focus on the hits achieved only by the 250 kilogram SAP bomb we discussed previously. For small destroyers hit by one bomb, 0 out of 1 were sunk. One hit by 3 bombs was sunk. For light cruisers, one ship hit once was not sunk. And then carriers, well, the data credits no carrier with 2 to 3 hits sunk by bombs. It's likely that the torpedoes were credited here instead. See for example Yorktown or Lexington. Of course, so they could be out of combat for a while when hit by a single or more bombs. However, that of course goes for every ship. And then for battleships, the list draws on Pearl Harbor, where, well, the BBs got hit by a lot of bombs and torpedoes. So it really is speculative in this regard, and I choose not to include it here. It goes without saying that this is likely only a very small portion of D3A targets. It's also only American targets that were hit, and as you noticed, it also doesn't include any transport ships. In any case, the overall conclusion from what I've seen is that 250 kilogram bombs that the Japanese used here, they could sink smaller ships, but this limited data pool isn't very conclusive just yet. Broadly, it does mirror the combat experience of the Germans and the United States Navy against shipping, whereby only destroyers and transport ships were really considered vulnerable to 250 kilogram bombs. Anything larger needed 500 kilogram bombs or more. It also appears from this data that 250 kilogram bombs were decidedly less destructive than torpedo attacks. To see an evaluation of those, check out my next video on Japanese torpedo tactics. I want to end this video with a shout out to our friends at Task Force Admiral, a new World War II Pacific Theater based video game that has just launched its Kickstarter campaign. I've been following the development for a while and have been interacting with the developers as well for years. In fact, in the past they provided some of the footage that you saw in videos, like the one on the action of Bougainville. I believe that Task Force Admiral could not be developed by a better team. They know their history and how carriers and fleets were managed during World War II. That's why I also agreed to contribute with some aircraft articles that you will find then in the final game. Task Force Admiral is set out to become a fantastic command and control management experience for the player. You get to be in charge for a United States Navy task force during 1941 to 1943 as you take on the Japanese Navy. And after trying it, I am really excited to see the finished product. In the future, it also seems that they want to expand the experience beyond the scope of the first package, so check out the Kickstarter with the link in the description. As always, thanks for watching, have a great day and see you in the sky.